Hello, and welcome to a short tutorial on the Classroom and Group Mindsets and Behaviors Action Plan as required as part of the application process for a District of Distinction, as well as eventually RAMP should you pursue that. For the Classroom and Group Mindsets and Behaviors Action Plan, we want you to turn in this template, one per school counseling program, or essentially one per building. If you have an elementary building, a middle school building, and a high school building in your district, you will be turning in 3 action plans, one for the elementary program and building, one for the middle school, and one for the high school. We want to make sure that you are using the ISCA template when you are filling out the Classroom and Group Mindsets and Behaviors Action Plan. Clicking on the link provided on the application will take you to a blank template, which you will need to make a copy of so that you can make this a working document for you. Essentially, once you've written your annual student outcome goal or goals, you can now plan to do the things to help reach your goals. So one tool that ISCA provides is the Classroom and Group Action Plan, as you see here. It helps us see what we are doing to address our ISCA student standards, essentially. Every time we do a different classroom lesson, activity, or small group, we're able to edit this document to show that. Again, this is another great advocacy tool to see where we're at in our building and the tiered services we are providing. It also shows how we are working to meet our student standards within our school level and building. So we want to list the activity with the primary mindset or behavior addressed by the intervention. So essentially, you are choosing 1 or 2 mindset or behavior standards per unit, per activity. And so really, you can just match it to the primary one here. The goal is not to have an activity listed with each standard. Really, this could be crosswalked as a K-12 program to see what students receive as a part of their K-12 school counseling experience towards their student standards. This is also a great way to see if you have any gaps. For instance, if you are only doing activities and lessons in self-management skills, it shows that you might have a gap and that you're not working towards student standards under learning strategies, just from being able to see a big picture with this action plan. This only includes direct services delivered to students. So you will not have any indirect services listed here just because we don't align our indirect services of collaboration, consultation, and referrals to our student standards. You will see those come up on the annual calendar. That's where you will mark not only direct student services, but also indirect and program management. Also remember that not every activity that you list on here in the action plan connects to an outcome goal, because our work is more holistic than just doing the things required to help meet our annual student outcome goals. We also work towards other student needs and building needs that are beyond those goals. And that's why not every activity results in positive outcomes and achievement, attendance, or discipline. School counselors design and implement instruction aligned to the ISCA student standards, which is why this tool is so helpful, because it's showing us what instruction we are implementing right next to the student standards listed on the far left column. And it's standards in classroom instruction, so Tier 1, Tier 2, small groups, large groups. School counseling program needs to spend time intentionally planning, which also is facilitated by this action plan. The Classroom and Group Action Plan defines the scope, focus, timing, and setting of planned instruction. And they're also intended to be a continual working document. They are created and revised annually and may be adjusted during the school year when needed. So showing you an example of my Classroom and Group Mindset and Behavior Action Plan, you can make a copy of this document each school year and continue to revise it and update it. So there are some small groups that we don't run every year because we're doing it based on identified need. And so that would be something that I would take off on the small group column. Based on data, if there is some instruction that we need to change the student standards to, I'm going to be making that change. There's some groups I'm not sure if we're going to list, and so sometimes I'll have that highlighted. As you can see here, for our 8th grade health and careers class, we go in once a semester because it's a semester course. So I haven't made plans for when we go in second semester. So I highlight that, something to point out to myself that I need to go back and enter the month that we go in. You can also see that I don't cover every single mindset or behavior standard. Obviously, if you're looking at a comprehensive program and you're looking at large groups, small groups, ongoing groups, classroom instruction, you are going to see that you are covering a lot. And I like to list essentially probably both mindset or behavior standards per activity or intervention that we are doing. But I also really like to mark what months of the year we are doing that intervention or activity. And the reason why is because it matches up to an annual calendar, which you guys will be turning in as part of this application process as well. And what I really like is that I can coincide months that I put on the action plan with the months that they will see the direct services here. So if we look, for example, when we see this closing the gap attendance small group, October and November, because we did it in the last 2 weeks of October, the first 2 weeks of November, knowing that I can go to this and see right here, match it up in my direct service column, which you can see from the top, the delivering and the direct student services. And I'm going to go to October and I find when we started that and I find when we concluded that in November. So it's really helpful, especially as I know part of the RAMP application, reviewers have to check to see your interventions and activities listed on this action plan and match it with your annual calendar in the months provided. So I like to provide the months here so they don't have to do a lot of searching for that. And it just helps me kind of double check my work and the accountability of that. So I really appreciate that. Something else with the classroom and group action plans, it really ensures that we are providing a systemic approach to provide students access to specific school counseling activities. Again, that accountability as just part of best practice is really helpful. It also ensures that we are targeting our ISCA mindset and behavior standards and that we're addressing those appropriately, developmentally, but also that our activities and services that we are delivering are thoughtfully scheduled and that optimal settings for delivery content are identified. So once we create our annual student outcome goals, we're creating steps as a part of our action plan to carry out our direct and indirect services to meet our goals. Again, a working document. Here is a great way to break down the pieces of this action plan. You can see that on the left side of the document, the mindsets and behavior ISCA student standards are listed, all 36. And we think about how we want our students to be as a result of our comprehensive school counseling program. It would be those mindsets and behaviors. So we have our 6 mindsets, our 29 behavior standards, and those behavior standards are broken down into learning strategies, self-management, and then social skills. This helps provide a broader scope, helps us see gaps in what we're teaching. Like I mentioned earlier, are we only teaching on social skills? This action plan really allows us to cast a large net and meeting the needs of all of our students. It also provides a structure. It kind of ensures our intentional practice as we go through any given school year, but it really is a simple document to fill out. When you do a classroom lesson, you put an X under class, a little blurb, what the activity was. Ideally, what you start to see is that you are spreading out your different classroom lessons in small groups so that you are not teaching the same thing over and over again. And what makes for a larger group? I would say anything that is beyond a small group setting. So I would say more than 10 kids, but less than an entire grade level would be considered a large group. Also, make sure to look at this form from a K-12 perspective. It is not just your role at any one level to teach all 35 student standards with fidelity. This is where it'd be helpful to complete as a K-12 team, should you have one. It'd be really helpful to crosswalk and look for the gaps in that K-12 approach. So remember, as a part of our classroom and group action plan, this is our big picture programming. We are reviewing this to look at gaps, remembering the difference between our classroom instruction versus large group, looking at it as a K-12 perspective, looking at our comprehensiveness through K-12, but you want to review this monthly. At least that's what I do, and that helps me keep it updated. But do take note. Do you have a good mixture of large group and small group and classroom instruction? This document helps you see that. Are you covering a variety of mindsets and behaviors? And it helps us review our participant data. So for who are we doing these activities or interventions? For how long? So maybe 4 weeks, and for how many? How many minutes? Is it 45-minute session? Lastly, as the one reflection prompt for this section, it asks for you to give 2 examples that demonstrate how an identified activity or lesson was fostering the development of the specified ISCA student standards to which it's attached. So essentially what we're asking here is when you are choosing 1 or 2 ISCA student standards, mindset or behaviors, to be the foundation of your activity, lesson, unit, intervention, right? It could be any one of those things. Want to know how you created or put together that content to foster the development of students being able to make positive growths in those student standards. And remember, growth through measuring their attitude or belief, their skill level, or their knowledge in those student standards that you turned into learning objectives, that you turned into pre and post test statements. If you did not watch the tutorial on annual student outcome goals, I described that data story a little bit more in depth there, but thinking about how you created that intervention or activity or lesson and how that content really orchestrated the development and growth of those student standards for which you chose to be the foundation.